What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the NCAA 12 Dynasty. We're rocking with the Memphis Tigers, and we just finished up our first year as the head coach of Memphis. We took one of the worst teams in the game, and we went 7-6. Not a bad time. Not a bad first year at all. We did get our ass kicked in the bowl game, but I mean, it is what it is. But, we lost to a Power 5 team in a bowl game. No big deal. So, in this episode, go run down how the season went and also go through this entire offseason, man. See how we can get better as a football team, get ourselves geared up for year number 2. So, hope you guys are excited for it. If you are, make sure you go ahead, smack that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand spanking new to the channel. Let's jump right into it. Coach Central is our first thing, and look at this. Our job security goes up a couple of notches. So we'll go ahead and see how the contract feedback is after 1 year of coaching these guys. And we actually do get a couple of goals met. We won 4 games in one season. That was a low expectation. If we didn't complete that, we were going to be fired for sure. And we made it to a bowl game in our first year, so that's going to be a huge impact on our job security. Still got some things that we do need to get done. We almost won 8 games in 1 year. That would have been a huge impact on our job security. We can work on that. Did not get this, so that's probably going to be a thing that we fail. But we're going to be ranked in the top 100. So we're doing an all right job here. And our job security, that's safe as well. Can't complain about that. Checking out some of the other major awards in college football just to see who ended up winning it all. This is who ended up winning the Heisman. Jimmy McDonald out of Houston. Houston is actually in our conference. They're in Conference USA back when this game was first coming out. He had a pretty good year overall. He was a menace, honestly. 49 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. He was not messing around and finding out, including a 91-yard dot. He had 4,500 yards, and he racked up the awards too, not only winning the Heisman, but also the Maxwell, the Walter Camp, and the O'Brien. He was killing it out there this year. And this is Andrew Luck, by the way, though. He ends up finishing second in the Heisman race. I believe this is, I want to say this is Troy Smith, but I'm not too terribly sure. This is around the time where Tattoo Gate happened. That was him. And then this Nebraska running back, he finishes 4th with John Jones rounding out the Heisman watch. As for the All-Americans, though, I'm really curious to see if we did have any All-Americans on this list. And it doesn't look like we have anybody on the offensive side of the ball for the first team All-American. Or do we have anybody for defensive side of football? Maybe that changes with the second team All-NCAA group. And it looks like we do not get any All-Americans this year. We're going to work on that for sure. Maybe we'll have a little bit more luck with Conference USA. And Conference USA is a similar thing. First team All-Conference, a lot of Houston guys, a couple Southern Miss guys who we did beat, by the way. We do have a first team All-Conference, though. That's Seth Bryant. He's the senior from Hialeah, Florida. So we do have at least one first team All-Conference guy. You love to see that. He's our only first team All-Conference guy, however. As for the second team All-Conference, looks like no offensive guys either. Maybe we'll have a little bit better luck on the defensive side of the football. And we get a couple here. Vince Tate, he's named second team All-Conference, as is Zach Scott, the sophomore from Brownsville, Louisiana. And we got some more guys in the secondary too. Julian Jackson from Signal Mountain, Tennessee. He also gets named second team All-Conference, as does Tommy Myers. So, a good group here in the secondary. And we end up with five All-Conference USA players, 4 of which on that second team list. And of course, we'll check in on all of the other award winners. And like I said, Jimmy McDonald is going to win the Maxwell. For the Walter Camp, that also goes to Jimmy McDonald. As for the Begnaret, that's going to go to junior corner AJ Green. He's from Tallahassee, Florida. He could be going off to the NFL. He's got a pretty high overall to work with. As for Nagurski, it's going to be Marcus Hamilton, the junior from Ohio State. He ends up with 6 sacks and 23 TFLs throughout the season. O'Brien also going to Jimmy McDonald's. Like I said, he got a lot of awards this year. And the Walker is going to go to Mark Kraft, the sophomore running back from the University of South Carolina. He had 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns on the year. He was a dog. Up next is the Blinikoff that goes to the best wide receiver, and that goes to Jeff Addison, the senior from SMU. He had 1,500 yards receiving as well as 21 touchdowns. He also got that x-ray done, and it's confirmed he's got that dog in him as well. Up next is the Mackey, which goes to the best tight ends in the country, and that goes to junior redshirt Joey Evans, representing Ohio State, Beaver Creek, Ohio. He had 727 yards and 9 touchdowns on the season. For the best offensive lineman, that's going to go to Maurice Jackson of Baylor. The junior from Pleasanton, Texas, ends up with 40 pancakes and only allowing 1 sack as well. For the Remington, that goes to the best center in college football, though. That goes to Spencer James, the junior redshirt from the University of South Carolina. Had 30 pancakes and 6 sacks, representing well for Marion, South Carolina. Moving on to the best defensive players in the country, we got RJ Hudson winning the Lombardi this year. The junior redshirt from USC had 18 TFLs, 7 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He represents for Flat Rock, Michigan. As for the best linebacker in the country, that goes to John Watson, the senior redshirt from League City, Texas. Representing for the Oklahoma Sooners, he had 6 sacks and 2 forced fumbles on the year. The Jim Forpay Award will go to AJ Green, so he wins multiple awards this year. The Groza, which is the best kicker in college football, goes to Jason Sullivan, the senior redshirt from Ware Acres, Oklahoma. He was 21 for 23 on the season. Rounding out the awards is David Harris, a true freshman from Port Allen, Louisiana. He had 74 punts, and 26 of them were down inside the 20-yard line. Finally, the best return man, also known as the Jet Award, goes to the senior from Arkansas, Jeff Caldwell. He had over 1,000 return yards on the year, as well as a kickoff touchdown here in year number 1. Taking a quick peek at the stats throughout the season, and we start with the NCAA winners. For NCAA tackle winners, Vince Tate is on top of the list. He's at 57 solo tackles, and that does lead everybody in the nation. Tommy Myers also gets on here as well. He's tied for 2nd place. As for season stats throughout the year, and one thing that I do want to get better at is passing efficiency. Jesse Richards actually does finish the year under 50%. He didn't turn the football over, only 2 interceptions for his 31 touchdowns, but if we can get that passing efficiency a little bit better, he's going to be almost impossible to stop in the passing game. DeMarcus Mason also makes an appearance, mostly in mop-up duty. He was 12 for 29, 152 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the year. As for the running game, we've had our problems running the football almost all year, and of course we do not have a 1,000-yard rusher, but I like what I saw from our backup running backs. Matt Turner had a good year, 133 for 543 yards and 3 touchdowns. That does lead all carriers on the year, but Ali Atkinson made a name for himself. He might have been a freshman All-American. I was not able to confirm that, but 70 carries, 258 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had a solid year for someone that started out as the 3rd string running back. Finally, someone who I'm hoping to get a little bit more healthy and get some help on the offensive line is William Jones. I like his burst, but when he was in the game, his offensive line didn't help him very much, so he averaged under 2 yards a carry, although he did find the end zone once. Moving on to our receivers, James Pittman led the way in our receiving core. James Pittman had 800 yards receiving this year and 12 touchdowns. He was a magnet for us in the red zone this year. But guys also stepping up as well as Tristan Hale. He had 770 yards and 3 touchdowns. Anthony Douglas was our number 1 receiver going into this year. He had some injury issues, but going up against number 1 corners, Anthony Douglas had some tough challenges this year. 570 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brian Kidd, though, looked good from the tight end's position, though. 475 and 5 touchdowns here of the year. Other guys to find the end zone throughout the season is Cody Oliver. He has 1 touchdown. Matt Turner got a couple of touchdowns off halfback screens, as does William Jones and Ali Atkinson, who seemed like lightning in a bottle whenever he was in the game. And then finally, Chris Washington, the true freshman, he was not redshirted. He did get a chance to catch a couple of touchdown passes. But we progressed through the off-season, and we do get some more goal changes in our contract. One thing that was added in a positive way is that we did end up winning 25% of our games in one season, so that is going to boost up our job security a little bit. However, we did have one failure, and that was fill all team needs before the off-season each season. We did fail that, as we are still looking for a couple of middle linebackers to look to play for a football team next fall. If we do not fulfill that when we get through offseason recruiting, we might end up with a couple of walk-ons. But one of the more difficult things to always see in the offseason is that we have to say goodbye to some notable players, and a couple of notable players that we're saying goodbye to is some guys that are on the offensive line. Sam McNair and Mark Simmons, they did decent jobs this year, anchoring that left side. Our right side was what was going to be an issue for us this upcoming season, and it actually turned out that it was. Other players leaving is Michael Shaw. He was a defensive captain for us throughout the season. He had 4 sacks and 19 TFLs. Also leaving us is Tristan Hale, the senior from Cape Coral, Florida. Tristan Hale is somebody, he made some things happen in his senior year. 770 yards and 3 touchdowns, solid receiver, and we're going to need someone to step up to be that number 2 wide receiver for us next season. Another person that we're going to say goodbye to is DeMarcus Mason. He's a sophomore redshirt from Red Bank, Tennessee, and here's the thing with DeMarcus Mason. Usually I would try to convince people to stay, but Jesse Richards is also a sophomore, right? So what that means is that realistically he is never going to start. So we're going to let him go, because I also know that we have a couple of quarterbacks in the freshman class that could very well compete for that backup quarterback spot as well. But we do end up getting a transfer request, and it's a sophomore in the name of Justin Brown. He's a speed guy from Hollywood, Florida. We'll check him out real quick. Did not get very many opportunities over the course of the season. Only 4 carries for 14 yards on the ground. No receptions, but look at his skills. Oh my goodness, is he going to be dynamite. He's got 94 speed. He would be a return man for us right away. We would definitely use him, I'll tell you what. Now, when NCAA 12 came out, you had to sit out for a season, so you wouldn't see him play in year number 2. But when year number 3 comes around, dude is going to be someone that could very well be the vocal point of our offense, and we can redshirt him. So after we get him back, he'll have 3 years of eligibility to work with. So we are, of course, going to accept that, and I'm excited to see what he can do in the future for a football team. Now, one thing that is significantly different between NCAA 12 and NCAA 14 is that instead of just having one off-season signing period like there is in NCAA 14, in NCAA 12, it's broken down into 5 different weeks. So we have 5 weeks to do off-season recruiting. So let me give you a rundown of what's going on. Because we decided to take that transfer in, we are down to 11 scholarships. So we got to be a little bit methodical with who we trying to go after here. We do move up to a 2-star school though, so that should help us bring in better players in the future. But we are sitting just inside the top 100. We're at 99 right now. We brought in a few 3-star players, but it's been mostly 2 stars that we've been able to go after as of right now. So what does our recruiting board look like? Well, my big objective is obviously take care of those middle linebackers. There's 2 that I'm trying to get after. Chris Vincent, he is 3rd on our list right now. He's soft to Tulane, but Tulane has not offered a scholarship yet, so we can still get in there and maybe bring him on campus. And then there's a 1-star that has shown some interest. I don't want to bring in 1-stars, but a 1-star player is still better than a walk-on in my opinion. Matt Smith, we're about 480 behind him, but I don't know if we're going to be able to get him. Looks like Arkansas State's got a beat on him. Meanwhile, some other notable players we're going after. Lance Bailey was added by my defensive coordinator. He's got 8 scholarship offers, but we're really the only school that has offered him a scholarship in his top 10 is the Miami Redhawks. They're sitting in 8th right now. We're only 60 points behind, so we can make up that gap potentially. As could Paul Waller. He's soft to Michigan, but none of these top 10 schools have also offered a scholarship. So, we can also try to get up in there as well. Maybe bring in a very good defensive lineman. And of course, I want to get Trey Poland, add some depth at our wide receiver position. I really want to embrace being a passing squad since we're able to keep our staff together here in year number 1. Nobody moved or anything. That's why I did show any of the coaching changes. But what I'm going to do as we get players coming in, as some other recruiting news comes in, I'll let you know. So I'll see you for the next time that I do have a recruiting update for you guys. We'll see how this goes. So we get done with the first week of recruiting though, and we do get a couple of players right off the bat. We got that 3-star wide receiver that I wanted to add on. Talent is talent at the end of the day. And we also get a need met. Mark Smith, he's going to be a 1-star from the state of Tennessee, home state kind of guy. We do get him to sign the dotted line as well, and that partially helps take care of our middle linebacker need. Now, the other middle linebacker that we're going after, and Chris Vincent, he does sign, but not for us, though. He is going to go to Tulane. They did offer him a scholarship, and from there, it was barbecue chicken. So, we still need to find a middle linebacker that is going to fill this need for us, because right now, we are 1 middle linebacker short. So we get through a couple more weeks of the recruiting cycle, and we do end up signing a couple more players. Stephen Freeman is one of them. He's going to be a 1-star from Madison, Alabama. He does play defensive tackle, but he's going to be one of those guys where we're going to really have to develop because he doesn't really have that elite trait that's going to make him stand out right away, so he'll be a developmental piece. Speaking of development, we get a JUCO from Mountain Park, Georgia, Jerome Holmes. He'll bring a little bit of college football experience to our offensive line since we did have a few offensive linemen graduate from from our team recently. A couple of very notable offensive linemen, so we'll need to replace them. But again, someone that could be a backup piece, at least bring some experience, but I don't see him making a big impact on the field either. Now, going back in, hopefully we can get a couple more high impact guys before the end of this recruiting cycle. But it turns out we will not make any of our needs happen, unfortunately, as we do get a 3-star wide receiver from Georgia, and then we also sign a 2-star defensive end from Alabama to go with it. So we do end up using most of our scholarship offers, but that being said, we will be left with 1 middle linebacker short. We'll have to figure out what we need to do at middle linebacker, but we do sign the number 97 ranked recruiting class this season, and listen, we did what we could do. We started out as a 1-star program, so the fact that we are in the top 100, that's encouraging. But it just shows you how much more difficult NCAA 12 recruiting is compared to NCAA 14, just because, we couldn't low lock cheese, right? We could not make that happen, and because of that, it's harder to get quality players. We only signed 5 3-stars at a 1-star school. That's about accurate. So this is what our roster is going to be looking like. And listen, Justin Brown, he is actually now a junior, so we actually only have 2 years of eligibility with him. He actually becomes one of the best players that we have on our team, but we won't have him available for year number 2. But what we will do is look around and see if there's any changes that I really want to make onto our football team. And it starts with our athletes. We do not have any athletes to work with, so we'll go ahead and look around and see if there's any other changes that I want to make. So on the offensive side of the ball, I did not make a lot of changes, but one change that I did make was Jerome Holmes. He's our JUCO guy. I did end up moving him over. He started out as left tackle originally. I'm moving him over to right tackle because our starters, we're looking at either Clark Perkins or Matthew Bailey, and that just doesn't sound like a good prospect at all. What I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to move Matthew Bailey. I'm going to kick him over to left tackle so that he's a little bit more buried on the depth chart and will be a little bit more likely to be able to go ahead and possibly give him a red shirt. However, that being said, on the defensive side of the ball, I wanted to do a little bit more. Now, we tried to get some middle linebackers. We only end up signing one, and the one that we signed was not very good. Matt Smith, he's going to be a 46 overall, so that's a tough look. Luckily, we do have an extra outside linebacker that we could possibly move in. You know, there's a battle between, you know, Rocky Scott, AJ Kaysen, also Kevin Walker's going to come in, but I feel like Kevin Walker's not going to win the job, so I'm going to see if maybe move either him. Who's going to have the lowest drop in overall is what I'm curious about. So it's either AJ Kaysen or Rocky Scott. Now, Rocky Scott did have a scoop and score, which was really cool. He does have that defensive touchdown. AJ Kaysen didn't do much, so I think what I really want is I want Rocky Scott to win it right outside linebacker. I'm going to kick AJ Kaysen to the middle linebacker, and now we got our free middle linebackers that we're looking for. That way we don't have to bring in a walk-on. Now, you guys are probably wondering what I am going to do about custom players in this series. So what I've decided to do is I wanted to give you guys the ability to rename true freshmen that do make it onto the football team, right? That's what I wanted to do here in moving into year number 2 and moving forward. So these are the true freshmen that we did end up bringing in. You guys have seen them commit, you know, here or there. We end up bringing in, I think, 18 freshmen as well as a JUCO offensive lineman. So there's a lot of options for you guys out there. So what I need you guys to do is let me know down in the comments section of the offseason recap who you want to replace, and then who you want your guys' custom player name to be, as well as any swag that you would like to see on your football player as we progress through this series. So, you know, I'll have that in the pinned comment section, that template for the offseason recap video, and can't wait to see, you know, who makes it into the series. And in the event that you don't make it, what I'll either do is I will make you a high school senior, and we'll try to recruit you onto the team, or what we could also end up making happen is we try to, you know, we put you in for next season. So yeah, let me know in the comment section how you feel. But we now move on to the training results. We see who ends up getting better, who put in that work over the off season. We will have a few 80 plus overall guys to work with, but, you know, not much better than we had last year. Anthony Douglas does get to an 81. So does Justin Brown, but we won't have Justin Brown for this season because he has a transfer. The other 280 guys that we have is Justin Kelly and Theo Perry. They are both on special teams. So, you know, aside from kicking a football, they're not going to have much effect on the field. As for our quarterbacks, Jesse Richards will come back as our starter. He is now up to a 76 overall. But what I'm curious about, did he work on his throw accuracy? And he does. He's up to 82 throw accuracy. He had a lot of misfires last year, so that was something that I really wanted him to work on, and thankfully he did. As for the tailbacks, William Jones will be our starting running back, but then backup gets a little bit interesting. Matt Turner is a 70. We did redshirt Joe Smith, but do we have a place for Joe Smith? That's a really good question. And then Ali Atkinson, of course, he had some good moments for us last year, but can we find him the football field? And if not, will it be someone that potentially transfers? That's going to be a really good question. Fullback, Wills Ferwerda, he's now up over 50 overall, so that's kind of nice to see. Wide receiver, outside of Anthony Douglas, James Pittman looks like he'll step up to be our number 2 this upcoming season, and then relying on guys like Chris Washington, Willie Duckett, and Jamarcus Mitchell to really pick up that slack a little bit. For tight end, Brian Kidd now gets up to a 70, and he solidifies his tight end spot even more. Daryl Martin will serve as the backup, and Steve Bell will be our third string. Offensive line will be a huge test for us once again. Did not bring in the hog mollies that I wanted to bring in, at least from a talent perspective. Zach Foster will likely be our starting left tackle. Dan Larson should be a solid left guard. He's a 71. Antonio Campbell is a senior from Brandon, Mississippi. He'll be our best offensive lineman this season. But Chance Coleman put in some work this offseason. And then Clark Perkins is not... he did some good improving, but to be honest, he's still kind of terrible, to be honest. And that's why I moved a JUCO over there so that we look a little bit better. Right tackle is going to be a massive issue. Over on the defensive side of the football, though, Nate Coleman is now in that 60 overall range, so he is usable. As is Kyle Davis. We are missing out on some defensive linemen, so we really struggled with getting pressure last season from our defensive line. Look like that will hold up here as well. And then in the 4-3, we do at least get Robert Bowen back. He'll be our best defensive lineman. But Pat Taylor will now be considered a starter. In our linebacker room, Sam Miller returns as the starting left outside linebacker. He's from Elizabethton, Tennessee. Middle linebacker, we do get Vince Tate back as well. He will be serving as our main starter. And then on the right-hand side, Rocky Scott is going to come back. Had that defensive touchdown late in the season. He did win in spring ball. Finally, for our corners, we should have some solid corners this year. Ryan Towns and Zach Scott, they're both over 70 overall. They'll likely be the strength of our team. Speaking of strengths, Julian Jackson is now up to a 70 overall. He'll be a solid starter for us, as will Tommy Myers. He has really great speed, 91 speed now. He's a senior. He's got experience. The secondary will be the strength of our defense. So what we'll need to do this season, because we have 73 players on the roster as of right now, and what I need to do is I'm going to have to cut a few guys. And a few guys that I'm going to cut: Derek Dennis, he's a senior redshirt, only a 49 overall. He's not even a like a one-star. He was a former walk-on, so he's going to be the first cut. We signed a ton of wide receivers. He's going to have to go. I want to get rid of Matt Smith, but I don't think they will let me do that. They will let me get rid of some of these other linebackers here. So James Green, he's a left outside linebacker. I'm going to let him go. And then James McIntyre is a junior. He's a true junior and just not good. It's not good at all. This is an easy pick for me. We're going to release James McIntyre, and that will make up our 70-man roster of this upcoming season. But now we get into conference realignment, and just like in real life, going into the year number 2, what I want to do for this series is, as we're playing with these older games, I want to also simulate, the conference realignments as they happen in their timeline that, we're living in right now, right? So this is year number 2, so this will be going into the 2012 season, and in that 2012 season beforehand, we do see some significant shifts in conference realignment. First and foremost, we start with the SEC. Both Texas A&M and Missouri did end up leaving the Big 12 conference, and they decided to join the SEC. Texas A&M, they are now in the West Division, and that West Division, it looks brutal. There's 6 teams that finished in the top 25 this year that are up in there, and then Missouri, they joined the weaker of the SEC divisions. They go to the SEC East. This is obviously before Georgia really becomes the powerhouse that we see today. So then this actually makes it a cosmistic effect that we see today. We do end up seeing West Virginia join the Big 12 as a result of that. They're coming from what is called the Big East Conference. You eventually will know them as the American. And then TCU actually bolts from the Mountain West, and they use this opportunity to become a Power 5 team as well. They did struggle in the Power 5 initially before seeing them make the college football playoff in 2022. Going over to the Big East Conference now, what we end up seeing is, so the Big East, they ended up losing both West Virginia they only ended up losing West Virginia. They do end up replacing West Virginia with Temple. They do come from the MAC Conference in order to join this Big East. They do, however, lose their automatic tie-in to go to a New Year's Six Bowl. Finally, going into the Mountain West, we do see the Mountain West get significantly stronger. This is the year that Fresno State, Hawaii, and Nevada, they all make the jump from the WAC conference over to the Mountain West. So in this series, that means the WAC is only going to have 5 separate teams: Idaho, Louisiana Tech, New Mexico State, San Jose State, and Utah State. What ends up happening in real life is that this was actually a year in which 4 teams do make the jump from FCS to FBS, but we cannot add teams in this game. So what ends up happening is that Texas State and then UTSA, they join the WAC in real life, so they would actually have 7 teams in real life. South Alabama would be joining the Sun Belt, and then UMass becomes a MAC school. They would replace Temple. So since we made it through the 70-man roster, we've seen what's going on around college football. Let's go ahead and take a look back at our own team to see who are we going to end up redshirting. And our red shirts, they're all going to be on the offensive side of the football. First and foremost, we will end up redshirting Dan Washington from Hopewell, Virginia. He's buried on the depth chart. He's going to be our 4th-string quarterback, so we'll end up redshirting him. Shannon McCutcheon, if there's an event where both Jesse Richards and Riley Bell would get hurt at the same time, Shannon McCutcheon will come in first. I like his potential, but he's not ready yet. As for our running backs, no surprises here. Justin Brown, since he is not eligible to play on the field, we will end up giving him the red shirt. He will have 2 more years of eligibility to work with after this season. And finally, what we got going on at the wide receiver position, it's safe to say we're not going to need any wide receivers for a while. Unless they're like 4 or 5-star players, you know, we're not going to go after them. So what we ended up doing, because we're so deep at wide receiver, all of the freshman receivers that we got, they're all going to be redshirted. Jim Hill, Anthony Moss, Mark Smith, Trey Poland, and Derek Davenport. They're all going to be learning this game from the sideline. Now, if we do have a bunch of wide receivers hurt, we'll burn a couple of red shirts here or there, but even without the freshmen, we have 7 wide receivers still, so safe to say we won't need receiver for a while. And finally, this is what our schedule is going to be looking like here for this upcoming season. Now, I originally did have an FCS game, but we shouldn't be blowing out teams, and honestly, it'll make it a little bit harder for us. So what I did decide to do is I ended up scheduling Western Kentucky. DeMarcus Mason did end up transferring there, and if we do end up going about, if DeMarcus Mason is able to get his waiver approved, I checked the depth chart over there. He should be the starting quarterback, right? So more to come on that, but we will have the DeMarcus Mason game as our opening game. And then to round out conference play, we will play against Arkansas State once again. We beat them last year, with our Power 5 opponent going to be Duke to round out at least most of non-conference play. Then we'll go on the road to play against Marshall. We did beat them last year at home, followed by another non-conference game against Utah State. Then things get really interesting in conference play. We have our home game against Southern Miss, followed by a couple of road games against UAB and Eastern Carolina, before we round things out with Houston, UCF, UTEP, and finally Tulsa to wrap up conference play. So that's what our schedule is going to be looking like here in year number 2. So with that will conclude the off-season recap. And guys, I am so excited to start off year number 2. Next episode, we will get year number 2 going. We will have our first game against Western Kentucky. I hope you guys enjoyed this little off-season recap. And if you did, make sure you go ahead and smack that like button for me. Hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand spanking new to the channel. This is John J Gaming on the mic signing off. I'm hoping you're out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.